The day Elvis Presley died, the world stopped. It was a Tuesday, August 16, 1977, and the news broke like a bolt of lightning. Elvis, the king of rock and roll, was found collapsed in the bathroom of his Graceland mansion in Memphis, Tennessee. He was just 42 years old. The news spread faster than wildfire, and fans around the globe went into a state of shock and grief. In Liverpool, England, Spencer Lee, a music journalist and broadcaster, was in the middle of his afternoon show on BBC Radio Merseyside when he received the news. The airwaves were filled with the sound of silence, and then the news anchor's voice broke through, confirming the unthinkable. Spencer's heart sank. He knew this moment would change everything. Elvis wasn't just a musician. He was a cultural icon, a symbol of the American dream. His music, his style, his energy had inspired a generation. Spencer remembered the first time he saw Elvis on television, the way he moved, the way he sang, and the way he made everyone feel alive. It was 1956, and Elvis had just released Heartbreak Hotel. Spencer was a young teenager, and he was hooked from the first note. The news of Elvis's death brought back a flood of memories. Spencer thought about the early days when Elvis was just a young man from Tupelo, Mississippi, with a voice that could melt hearts and a presence that could electrify a room. He thought about the Cavern Club in Liverpool, where he had seen countless bands trying to capture that same magic, that same energy that Elvis had brought to the world. But the news also brought a sense of loss. Elvis had become a larger-than-life figure, but he was also a human being with his flaws and struggles. Spencer knew that the story of Elvis Presley was more than just the hits and the fame. It was a story of a man who had changed the world, but who had also been changed by it. In the days that followed, Spencer's show became a place for fans to share their memories, their stories, and their grief. People called in from all over, telling him about the first time they heard Elvis, the first time they saw him perform, and what he meant to them. The airwaves were filled with the sounds of Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock, and Love Me Tender, and the stories of a man who had left an indelible mark on the world. But the story of Elvis Presley didn't start in Memphis. It started in a small town called Tupelo, where a young boy named Elvis Aaron Presley was born on January 8, 1935. His family was poor, but they were close. Elvis grew up listening to gospel music in church and the blues on the radio. He learned to play the guitar and started singing at a young age. His voice was unique, a mix of raw emotion and smooth melody that could make people cry and dance at the same time. Elvis's childhood was marked by hard times and hard work, but it was also filled with music and dreams. He dreamed of being a star, of making a difference, of changing the world, and he did. But the road to stardom was not an easy one. It was filled with challenges, triumphs, and heartbreaks. And it all began in a small town called Tupelo, where a young boy with a golden voice started to make his mark on the world. The story of Elvis Presley is a story of a man who became a legend, but who was also a man. It's a story of a boy from Tupelo who changed the world, and a world that changed him. And it all started with a voice, a guitar, and a dream. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was born in a place that was deeply rooted in the history and culture of the American South. To understand Elvis, you have to understand where he came from: Mississippi, a state with a rich but troubled past. Mississippi is a land of contrasts. It's flat and low-lying, with the mighty Mississippi River running through it, providing both life and struggle. The state has a history of cotton plantations, slavery, and the Civil War. These elements deeply influenced the music and culture that shaped Elvis's life and career. In 1970, a singer named Mickey Newbury performed a medley of Civil War songs at a club in Hollywood. He sang Dixie, a song that was once a favorite of the South, and the Battle Hymn of the Republic, a song from the North. He ended with a tender ballad, All My Trials. The audience was stunned, but then stood up to applaud. Elvis heard about this performance and was captivated. He knew he had to sing an American trilogy himself. Despite his manager's doubts, Elvis recorded it live in Las Vegas. The song became a powerful part of his shows, a way for him to connect with his roots and the history of his country. Elvis's connection to the South was not just about the music. It was about the land, the people, and the stories that defined it. Mississippi, where Elvis was born, was a place where the blues were born. The blues came from the African American experience, from the pain and the joy of everyday life. Charlie Patton, a blues legend, was born near Jackson, Mississippi. He sang about the hard times and the good times, about the boll weevil that destroyed crops and the floods that devastated communities. His music was raw and real, and it influenced many who came after him, including Elvis. The blues were not just about sadness, they were about resilience and hope. The juke joints, where people went to dance and forget their troubles, were places where the blues thrived. On Saturdays, people would let loose, and on Sundays they would seek forgiveness. It was a cycle of work, play, and reflection that defined life in the South. The Mississippi River itself was a symbol of this life. It was a source of life, a means of transport, and a boundary that separated the North from the South. In 1863, the Union Army, led by General Ulysses S. Grant, captured Vicksburg, a key Confederate stronghold. This victory gave the North control of the river and marked a turning point in the Civil War. The war ended, but the scars remained. The South was left in ruins, and the people had to rebuild their lives. Elvis's birthplace, Tupelo, was a small town where the rhythms of the South were deeply felt. The music that Elvis grew up with, gospel, blues, and country, was a fusion of different cultures. His family was poor, but they had a strong sense of community and faith. The church was a central part of their lives, and Elvis's love for gospel music was a reflection of this. As Elvis grew older, he became a symbol of the South's rebirth. He took the music of his roots, blues, country, and gospel, and transformed it into something new. Rock and roll was a fusion of these styles, and it spoke to a generation that was hungry for change. Elvis's music was a bridge between the old and the new, between the South and the rest of the world. Elvis's first single, "That's All Right Mama," was a cover of a song by Arthur Big Boy Crudup, a blues musician from Mississippi. Crudup's life was a story of struggle and resilience. He worked on farms and played music when he could, but he never saw much money from his songs. Elvis's cover of "That's All Right Mama" brought Crudup's music to a wider audience, but Crudup himself never received the royalties he deserved. This was a sad reflection of the music industry at the time, where many black artists were exploited. Elmore James, another blues legend from Mississippi, was known for his slide guitar playing. His song "Dust My Broom" was a cover of a Robert Johnson song, and it influenced many rock musicians. The blues were a living tradition, passed down from one generation to the next, and Elvis was a part of that tradition. Elvis's music was a reflection of the South, a place of contrasts and contradictions. It was a place of pain and joy, of struggle and resilience. Through his music, Elvis told the story of his roots and the people who shaped him. His songs were a tribute to the land, the culture, and the history of Mississippi, a place that will always be a part of him. Jackson, the capital city of Mississippi, is right in the middle of the state. To the north, you'll find Clarksdale, a town with a rich history in the blues. It was founded by John Clark in 1848, and many believe it's the birthplace of the blues. Around 1903, a man named W.C. Handy was waiting for a train at the nearby Tutwiler station. He heard a black man playing a guitar with a penknife and singing a song about the Southern and Yellow Dog railroads. Handy was so moved that he later wrote the Yellow Dog Blues. He spent a couple of years in Clarksdale, soaking up the local culture and gathering inspiration for his music. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was also influenced by Clarksdale. In his teens, he would visit the Handy Theater in Memphis, where he saw R&B performers. One of the songs he loved was C.C. Rider, a classic blues tune first recorded by Ma Rainey in 1924. Ma Rainey, born Gertrude Pridgett, was known as the mother of the blues and had a powerful, stately voice. Her version of C.C. Rider featured Louis Armstrong on cornet and became a hit. Later, Ray Charles and Chuck Willis covered it, and Elvis used it to open his concerts. The song's lyrics, about a traveling preacher, must have resonated with Elvis, who grew up in the South. Another influential blues singer, Bessie Smith, was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee, in 1894. She was discovered by John Hammond and recorded for Columbia Records. In 1925, she recorded W.C. Handy's St. Louis Blues with Louis Armstrong on cornet. The song became a blues standard, and Bessie Smith earned the title Empress of the Blues. Tragically, in 1937, she was in a car accident near Clarksdale. Despite rumors that she was refused treatment at a white hospital, She was actually taken to an African-American hospital in Clarksdale, where her right arm was amputated. She died without regaining consciousness. Thousands of people lined the streets of Clarksdale for her funeral, but her grave remained unmarked until 1970, when Janis Joplin bought a headstone for her. Janis said, "Bessie showed me the air and taught me how to fill it." Clarksdale was also the birthplace of Son House, a legendary bluesman born in 1902. He was still around when Handy visited the town. Other famous blues musicians from Clarksdale include John Lee Hooker, born in 1917, and Ike Turner, born in 1931. Muddy Waters, born in Rolling Fork, Mississippi, met Son House in a Clarksdale blues club and later became a major influence on blues and rock music. ZZ Top even made a guitar from wood from Muddy's old cabin. Elvis recorded a version of Muddy's "Got My Mojo Workin'." One of the most mysterious figures in blues history is Robert Johnson. Born in Hazlehurst, Mississippi in 1911, Johnson's life is shrouded in legend. It's said that he made a deal with the devil at the crossroads of highways 49 and 61 in Clarksdale. The devil appeared as a large black man, tuned Johnson's guitar, and taught him to play. Whether or not this is true, Johnson's music is filled with themes of the devil and the supernatural, as heard in songs like Crossroad Blues and Hellhound on My Trail. In 1938, Johnson was poisoned with strychnine-laced whiskey by the husband of a woman he was seeing. He died a few days later, becoming one of the first members of the 27 Club. His recordings have stood the test of time, and his songs have been covered by many artists, including the Rolling Stones. Sam Cooke, born in Clarksdale in 1931, had a voice that could rival Elvis's. He started his career singing gospel with the Soul Stirrers, and later transitioned to secular music. His hit "You Send Me" launched him into pop stardom, and he went on to record classics like "Chain Gang" and "A Change Is Gonna Come." In 1964, Cooke's life was cut short when he was shot and killed at a Los Angeles motel. The incident was tragic and sparked conspiracy theories, but it's likely that the motel owner acted out of fear. Conway Twitty, born Harold Lloyd Jenkins in 1933, was another Clarksdale connection. He was influenced by Elvis and recorded for Sun Records in Memphis. He chose the stage name Conway Twitty from road signs he saw and had a hit with "It's Only Make Believe" in 1958. His voice was so similar to Elvis's that some thought Elvis had recorded it under a pseudonym. The influence of Clarksdale and the surrounding area extends beyond the blues. Greenwood, about 40 miles south of Clarksdale, is the birthplace of soul singer Betty Everett and Jerry Butler. Both had successful careers in the 1960s, and Elvis later recorded Butler's "Only the Strong Survive." Greenwood is also close to Indianola, where B.B. King was born in 1925. King was a sharecropper before becoming a legendary blues guitarist and singer. He recorded his first hit, 3 O'Clock Blues, in 1952 and named all his guitars Lucille. King played over 15,000 gigs in his career. Greenville, about 50 miles from Greenwood, is the birthplace of Jim Henson, the creator of the Muppets. The town has a museum dedicated to Henson, featuring early versions of his characters. The Muppets often poked fun at Elvis, including in a skit where Elvis Caesar delivers a line like, "Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your steers." Winona, a small community near Greenwood, is where Roebuck Staples was born in 1914. He formed the Staples Singers with his daughters and became known for songs like "Uncloudy Day" and "Respect Yourself." Mavis Staples, his daughter, was even rumored to have almost married Bob Dylan. The song "Ode to Billy Joe," recorded by Bobby Gentry in 1967, was inspired by a story set near Greenwood. The song became a hit, and while the lyrics are fictional, the Tallahatchie Bridge is real. Gentry's real name was Roberta Lee Streeter, and she was born in Chickasaw County, Mississippi, in 1944. Mississippi's culture and language are deeply rooted in the South. Southern English has unique terms like y'all and fixin' to, and people often call their fathers daddy. Education was only made mandatory in Mississippi in 1982, but the state has produced some of the most influential musicians in American history. Oxford, just 50 miles from Tupelo, is home to the University of Mississippi, known as Ole Miss. The university has a complex history, including the integration of James Meredith in 1962, which led to violent riots. Despite its challenges, Mississippi has a rich musical heritage that has shaped the sound of American music. From the blues to rock and roll, the state's influence is felt around the world. Clarksdale, in particular, remains a vibrant center for blues music, hosting an annual blues festival and preserving the legacy of its musical pioneers. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was born in a place rich with history and culture, a region that would deeply influence his life and music. This area, steeped in the traditions of the South, was home to many great artists and musicians, including William Faulkner and Tennessee Williams. Faulkner, a Nobel Prize-winning novelist, lived in Oxford, Mississippi, and wrote extensively about the fictional Yoknapatawpha County, a place that mirrored his own surroundings. His most famous novel, The Sound and the Fury, was published in 1929 and is a masterpiece of American literature. Faulkner lived at Roanoke, his home in Oxford, from 1930 until his death in 1962. Today, Roanoke is a tourist attraction, where visitors can explore the place that inspired so much of his work. Tennessee Williams, another giant of American literature, grew up in Columbus, Mississippi, and later moved to Clarksdale. His plays, such as A Streetcar Named Desire, 1947, and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, 1955, are known for their intense emotional drama and deep Southern roots. Williams, born Thomas Williams, chose his pen name to honor his father's birthplace, Tennessee. His plays often featured themes of passion and conflict, much like the sweltering climate of the South. Marlon Brando, a leading actor of his time, gained fame through his roles in Williams' plays, and it's rumored that Elvis Presley, a fan of Williams' work, may have considered appearing in one of his plays, though it would likely have been in a movie rather than on Broadway. Joel Williamson, in his book, Elvis Presley, A Southern Life, argues that the emotional intensity and violence of Southern culture produced powerful artists like Faulkner, Williams, and Elvis Presley. These three figures, living within 40 miles of each other, each left an indelible mark on American culture. Faulkner's novels, Williams' plays, and Presley's music all captured the essence of the South, a place of deep emotions and complex histories. The band, a music group known for its Southern sound, further captured the spirit of the region. Despite being led by Robbie Robertson, a Canadian, the band's music deeply resonated with the South, thanks in part to the stories and influence of drummer Levon Helm, who was from Arkansas. Their second album, The Band, released in 1969, is a testament to their ability to bring the South to life through music. However, the history of the South is not without its dark chapters. The treatment of indigenous populations by white settlers was often shameful. Conflicts and betrayals were common, and the construction of the Old Natchez Trace, a historic route stretching 440 miles from Natchez, Mississippi, to Nashville, Tennessee, is a reminder of the complex relationships between different groups. The Old Natchez Trace passes through Jackson and Kosciuszko, the birthplace of Oprah Winfrey in 1954. The visitor center for the Old Natchez Trace is located in Tupelo, which is also the halfway point of the route. In Natchez, a tragic event occurred in 1940 when a dance hall for the black community caught fire, resulting in the deaths of over 200 people, including members of Walter Barnes and his Royal Creoleans Band. The incident, known as the Natchez Dance Hall Fire, was later memorialized in Howlin' Wolf's song, Natchez Burnin'. The musical landscape of the South was also shaped by artists like Big Joe Williams, born in Crawford, Mississippi, in 1903. His father, a Cherokee named Redbone Williams, influenced his music, which often reflected his rambling and argumentative nature. Williams played a 9-string guitar and recorded 2 blues classics, Baby Please Don't Go and Crawlin' King Snake. Despite his influence, he died in poverty in a caravan in Crawford in 1982. Willie Dixon, born in Vicksburg, Mississippi in 1915, was a key figure at Chess Records. A bassist and producer, Dixon is best known for his songwriting, which produced hits like Little Red Rooster and Hoochie Coochie Man. Bo Diddley, another influential figure, was born Ellis Bates, later McDaniel, in Macomb, Mississippi, in 1928. He started as a boxer and later became a musician, known for his distinctive rhythm and custom-made guitars. His hit Bo Diddley was recorded in 1955 and he influenced many artists, including the British R&B groups of the 1960s. Jimmy Buffett, born on Christmas Day 1946 in Pascagoula, Mississippi, brought a laid-back, tropical vibe to American music. His album, A White Sport Coat and a Pink Crustacean, 1973, made him famous, and he is known for hits like Margaritaville. Buffett, a savvy businessman, has built a successful empire around his music, including Margaritaville resorts. Unlike Elvis, who never fully capitalized on his fame in the same way, Buffett has leveraged his image into a lifestyle brand. Chris Ledoux, born in Biloxi, Mississippi, in 1948, was a rodeo champion and country music artist. His albums often reflected his rodeo life, and he gained wider recognition thanks to the support of Garth Brooks. The band Three Doors Down, formed in Escatawpa, Mississippi, has also contributed to the region's musical legacy. Despite its natural resources, Mississippi continues to struggle with poverty and the impacts of extreme weather. Flooding is a common occurrence, and the construction of levees to protect farmland has sometimes failed, as seen during Hurricane Katrina in 2005. The town of Waveland, Mississippi, was nearly destroyed but is gradually being rebuilt. The state's economy has been bolstered by the introduction of casinos, though initially they were only allowed to operate offshore. After Hurricane Katrina, land-based casinos became permissible. Elvis Presley, born in Tupelo, Mississippi, in 1935, was deeply influenced by the rich musical community around him, including gospel and blues. And like the Beatles, who drew inspiration from artists outside their homeland, Elvis found his inspiration on his doorstep. He brought the sounds of the South to the world with his unique style, blending gospel, blues, and rock and roll into a sound that captured the hearts of millions. Elvis' relationship with his parents, particularly his mother, Gladys, has been the subject of much speculation. While some writers have suggested an unnatural bond, the truth is likely more conventional. Elvis' family tree is rich and diverse, with roots in Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. His maternal great-great-grandmother, Mourning Dove White, was a full-blooded Cherokee, and this ancestry is evident in the dark eyes and hair of both Elvis and his mother. However, statistically, Elvis was only about 3% Cherokee. On his father's side, the Presley lineage can be traced back to Scotland, with the family moving to Ireland during the Highland clearances and then to America in 1745. The Presley name may have Welsh origins, as suggested by the Preseli Mountains in Pembrokeshire, Wales, and the area known as St. Elvis. Elvis' family tree includes figures like Dunnan Presley Jr., a Civil War deserter with multiple marriages, and Jesse D. McDowell Presley, Elvis' grandfather, who was raised in poverty but dreamed of owning an expensive suit. On Gladys' side, the family history is marked by complex relationships and multiple marriages. John Mansell, one of Gladys' ancestors, abandoned his wife and children, and Gladys' parents were first cousins. The family also includes a Jewish ancestor, which may explain the Star of David on Gladys' grave. Elvis, known for his sense of humor, joked that his mother was covering her options, but he was also open to the idea of his diverse heritage. Elvis' family tree might even include a distant connection to Oprah Winfrey. Thomas Presley, a registered slave owner in the 1860s, had 2 mulatto boys among his slaves, one of whom could be Oprah's great-grandfather. While this connection is not definitive, it highlights the complex and intertwined histories of the South. Elvis Presley's life and music were deeply rooted in the rich cultural tapestry of the South. From the literary legends of Faulkner and Williams to the musical pioneers of the blues and country, Elvis drew inspiration from a heritage that was both beautiful and troubled. His unique blend of gospel, blues, and rock and roll not only defined a generation, but also continues to resonate with audiences around the world. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was born into a family with a rich and sometimes troubled history. His great-grandfather, Andrew Presley Jr., lived to be 101, but the family also had a history of early deaths. 2 of Gladys' brothers, Travis and Johnny, died young, both heavy drinkers and prone to violence. Sexual promiscuity was common in the family, and this legacy influenced Elvis in many ways. Among the family, there were 3 sets of twins, 2 on Gladys' side and 1 on Vernon's, which might explain why Vernon and Gladys had twins themselves. The Presleys settled in Tupelo, Mississippi, a city with a population of about 30,000. The city was named after a tree known for its wood-carving bark and gum used in furniture. Local foods included polk salad, a traditional Southern dish. Gladys Love Smith, born on a farm in Pontotoc, Mississippi, on April 25, 1912, worked in the fields and loved singing in church. She was a fan of Jimmie Rodgers, especially his song Mean Mama Blues. In 1932, tired of farm life, she moved to East Tupelo, the poorer side of town, and worked at the Tupelo garment factory, earning $2 a day. Vernon Elvis Presley, born in Fulton, Mississippi, on April 10, 1916, was named Elvis because his mother, Minnie Mee, liked the sound of the name. Vernon dropped out of school and had no steady job when he met Gladys. They shared a love for singing in church and roller skating. After a 2-month courtship, they married on June 7, 1933. They lied about their ages on the marriage certificate to seem older, with Vernon claiming to be 22 and Gladys 19, though he was actually 17 and she was 21. Gladys stopped working at the factory when she fell ill, likely due to carrying twins with a bad liver. The factory raised $10 for her, buying sheets and blankets for the baby, though they didn't know it would be twins. Vernon, with help from his brother Vester and his father, built their first home on the old Saltillo Road for $150. At 4 a.m. on January 8, 1935, Gladys gave birth to Jesse Guerin, named after Vernon's father. Jesse was already dead by the time his brother, Elvis, was born at 4:35 a.m. Vernon placed Jesse's body in a shoebox and buried him in an unmarked grave. Gladys often told Elvis that he had inherited his twin brother's strength, which might have influenced his sense of uniqueness. Vernon struggled to keep a job, and in 1937, he and Gladys' brother Travis were caught altering a check. They were each sentenced to 3 years in Parchman Farm, a notorious prison. Vernon served 18 months, and during his time there, Gladys and Elvis made the 100-mile round trip to visit him on weekends. The prison had a strict regime, but Vernon was allowed conjugal visits with Gladys. After Vernon's release, the family faced financial difficulties. They moved in with a cousin, and Gladys worked in a laundry. Vernon found work in a shipyard in Pascagoula, and later at a prisoner of war camp. In 1943, they earned $1,232 and paid $12 in taxes. Gladys had a miscarriage and could not have more children, making Elvis their only living child. Gladys walked Elvis to school every day, ensuring he received an education. Despite Vernon's lack of interest in formal education, Gladys believed in its importance. Elvis developed a strong faith and attended I Assembly of God Church, where he sang and grew emotionally from the Pentecostal preaching. Elvis befriended local country singer Mississippi Slim and performed on local radio at age 8. He received an A in music from Milam Junior High. At the Mississippi-Alabama Fair and Dairy Show in 1945, Elvis performed Old Shep and came 5th, though he remembered the day more for the beating he got from his mother for going on dangerous fairground rides. Elvis bought his first guitar, a cheap one for $8, from the Tupelo hardware store for his 10th birthday. He wanted a rifle but settled for the guitar. When other kids cut the strings, some helped buy new ones, and Elvis wished he had that rifle instead. His musical talent was evident, and he continued to perform and grow in the small town of Tupelo, setting the stage for his future as a music legend. Tennessee is a bit bigger than Mississippi, but it has twice as many people, around 6 million. Two of its biggest cities are Nashville, the capital, and Memphis. Nashville has about 650,000 people, and Memphis has just a bit more. After that, the next biggest cities, Knoxville and Chattanooga, have only about 180,000 each. Tennessee is surrounded by 8 other states: Missouri, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Arkansas. The state's name comes from a Cherokee word for a river, and the Mississippi River forms the western boundary. That's why the city of Memphis got its name from the ancient Egyptian city on the Nile. Tennessee has some really high mountains, especially in the east. The Smoky Mountains are famous, and they even inspired a song by Johnny Cash called "A Boy Named Sue." The highest peaks are over 6,000 feet tall. Back in the early 1800s, Tennesseans were known for volunteering to fight in wars. They helped General Andrew Jackson win the Battle of New Orleans in 1815, and later, during the Mexican-American War, 30,000 Tennesseans volunteered when only 3,000 were needed. That's why Tennessee is called the Volunteer State. However, one of its most famous heroes, Davy Crockett, died defending the Alamo in Texas. When the Civil War started, Tennessee was torn apart. Some people supported the Union, and others supported the Confederacy. There were over 1,400 battles in Tennessee, more than in any other state except Virginia. After the war, Tennessee had to abolish slavery and give voting rights to black people, but the process was slow and difficult. During the 1920s, Tennessee was dry because of Prohibition. Even today, some counties like Lynchburg, where Jack Daniels is made, still don't allow alcohol. Tobacco was a big industry, and in World War II, Tennessee played a crucial role in developing the atomic bomb, which was used against Japan. Tennessee also has a rich musical history. In 1927, the first significant country music recordings were made in Bristol, featuring Jimmie Rodgers and the Carter Family. Memphis became famous for the blues, and in 1954, Elvis Presley recorded his first songs at Sun Studio. Nashville, with its Grand Ole Opry, became the center of country music. The show started in 1925 and featured many famous artists. Elvis grew up listening to it and later performed on the stage where his hero, Hank Williams, had stood. Country music in Nashville had a unique sound, thanks to musicians like Chet Atkins, who developed the Countrypolitan style. However, in the 1970s, artists like Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings rebelled against the polished sound and created outlaw country, which was more raw and authentic. Tennessee's history is full of stories of war, music, and change. From the mountains to the Mississippi River, it's a place that has shaped American culture in many ways. The city of Memphis, with its rich history and vibrant culture, has always been a melting pot of music and art. It's a place where blues, soul, and rock and roll were born, and where legends like Elvis Presley, B.B. King, and Johnny Cash made their marks. But Memphis wasn't always the thriving metropolis it is today. It has a past filled with struggles and triumphs, and its story is as complex as the music it inspired. In the late 1800s, Memphis faced one of its darkest periods. In 1878, a devastating outbreak of yellow fever swept through the city, claiming over 5,000 lives. The city was left in ruins, its charter revoked, and it was declared bankrupt. It wasn't until 1893 that Memphis began to rebuild. One of the key figures in this revival was Robert Church, a man of mixed race who saw the potential in the city. After the epidemic, Church bought property at rock-bottom prices and used his profits to open a bank that lent money to the community. His efforts not only revitalized the city, but also made him the first black millionaire in the South. The heart of Memphis's musical soul beat on Beale Street. This was where workers would unwind after long days of hard labor, seeking out juke joints and getting lost in the blues. The street was known for its lively atmosphere, but it also had a darker side. Prostitution, gambling, and other vices were rampant, and it was a place where the line between joy and sorrow often blurred. As one evangelist put it, if whiskey ran ankle deep, you could not get drunk quicker than you can on Beale Street today. One of the most influential figures on Beale Street was W.C. Handy, often called the father of the blues. In 1910, he wrote Mr. Crump, a campaign song for politician Ed Crump. The song later evolved into Memphis Blues, and it became a classic, with Louis Armstrong's version being one of the most famous. Handy's music captured the essence of Beale Street, with its mix of joy and struggle, and it helped to spread the blues beyond the city's borders. Memphis was also the birthplace of many legendary musicians. Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, was born in the city in 1942, though she was mostly raised in Detroit. Memphis Minnie, whose real name was Lizzie Douglas, was a powerful blues guitarist and singer. She was known for her strong, masculine playing style, and she even married 3 male guitarists over the course of her life. Her songs like When the Levee Breaks and Me and My Chauffeur Blues are still celebrated today. Bobby Blue Bland, a distinctive R&B singer, was born just a few miles outside of Memphis in 1930. His deep, soulful voice, and emotional performances made him a favorite among both black and white audiences. He often collaborated with B.B. King, and his music was anything but bland. Tina Turner, born 30 miles from Memphis in Nutbush, Tennessee, became one of the most iconic performers of the 20th century. Her song, Proud Mary, which she recorded with her then-husband Ike Turner, is a testament to the funk and soul that defined Memphis's musical legacy. The city's influence extended to the world of rock and roll as well. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, moved to Memphis with his family in 1948 when he was just 13 years old. The city's vibrant music scene, especially on Beale Street, had a profound impact on him. He would often visit the Lansky Brothers store, where he bought colorful clothing that would become his trademark. Despite his struggles in school, Elvis's passion for music was undeniable. He worked various jobs, from a cinema usher to a deliverman for Crown Electric, but his dream was always to make it as a musician. Sam Phillips, the founder of Sun Records, was another key figure in Memphis's musical history. He started the Memphis Recording Service in 1950, recording local blues and R&B artists. Phillips had a vision. He wanted to capture the raw, authentic sound of the city's music. He recorded artists like B.B. King, Howlin' Wolf, and Ike Turner's Kings of Rhythm, whose song Rocket 88 is often cited as the first rock and roll record. Phillips believed that his work was more than just making music. He saw it as a way to bridge racial divides and create something truly special. In 1952, Phillips launched Sun Records, and it quickly became a hub for up-and-coming musicians. Elvis Presley walked into Sun Records in 1954, hoping to make a demo for his mother. Phillips recognized Elvis's talent and recorded him, leading to the birth of a new genre and a new star. Elvis's first single, That's All Right, was a blend of country, blues, and rock and roll, and it set the stage for his meteoric rise to fame. Memphis's influence on music continued to grow in the 1960s and 1970s. Booker T and the MG, a group of Memphis-born musicians, became famous for their instrumental hits like Green Onions. They were the house band for Stax Records, a label that produced some of the most iconic soul and funk music of the era. Artists like Otis Redding, Isaac Hayes, and the Staple Singers all recorded at Stax, creating a sound that was uniquely Memphis. Even today, Memphis continues to be a place where music and culture intersect. The city's history is a testament to its resilience and creativity, and its legacy lives on in the music that still fills the air. From the blues of Beale Street to the rock and roll of Sun Records, Memphis has always been a place where dreams are made and legends are born. So let's talk about the very first record that launched Elvis Presley into stardom. On July 18, 1953, an 18-year-old Elvis walked into Sun Records, a small recording studio in Memphis, Tennessee. He was just a truck driver at the time, but he had a dream of becoming a singer. He paid $4 to record two songs, My Happiness and That's When Your Heartaches Begin. Elvis didn't sound like anyone else. When asked who he sounded like, he famously replied, "I don't sound like nobody." His voice was unique, a mix of country, blues, and pop. My Happiness showed off his sweet, soulful voice, while That's When Your Heartaches Begin was a bit more raw and emotional. This recording session was just the beginning. It wasn't until about a year later, in 1954, that Elvis recorded his first official single with Sun Records. That song was That's All Right, Mama. It was a game changer. With just a simple setup Elvis on vocals, Scotty Moore on guitar, and Bill Black on bass, they created something that was completely new and exciting. Sam Phillips, the studio owner, added a bit of echo to the recording, which gave it an even more dynamic sound. That's All Right, Mama didn't become a national hit right away, but it was a huge deal in Memphis. It got a lot of airplay on local radio, and Elvis started to get noticed. People were drawn to his energy and his unique style. He wasn't just a singer, he was a performer moving and grooving on stage in a way that no one had seen before. Elvis' debut with That's All Right, Mama was more than just a song. It was the start of a revolution in popular music. It combined elements of country, blues, and rock and roll in a way that appealed to a wide audience. It was a perfect storm of talent, timing, and innovation. Sam Phillips had a vision, and Elvis was the one who brought it to life. The song was a hit in Memphis, and soon it was being played across the South. It wasn't long before Elvis became a national sensation, and That's All Right, Mama is now considered one of the most important records in the history of rock and roll. So when you listen to That's All Right, Mama, you're not just hearing a song, you're hearing the birth of a legend. It's a reminder that sometimes the most impactful things come from the most unexpected places. Elvis Presley, a young truck driver from Memphis, changed the world with his voice and his music. And it all started with that first recording at Sun Records.